So yesterday, someone sent me the trailer, a link to a trailer of a new movie. It's an Andrew Garfield movie. I believe this is the same guy that played Spider-Man. And the title of the movie is The Uprising. And it looks very promising. But the cool thing about it is that it has serious biblical connotations. I love First Kings. I love reading through First Kings every year, once a year. It's one of my favorite books in the Old Testament. And there is so much we can learn from First Kings. Now the movie The Uprising, it looks like it's if Andrew Garfield plays the role of a poor farmer who's seeking just to get by day to day, which is what most people were doing in those times. Poverty was a real thing, and it was spread across the land. It seemed in those times the only prosperous person was the king and those who worked directly for the king. And so in the trailer, Andrew Garfield's character has had enough. The king has required an increase on taxes for the common people. And Andrew Garfield's character has had enough, and he actually makes a stand. And it looks like his fellow people stand with him, and they actually begin attacking the kingdom of the king. And the reason why this sticks out to me is because when we look at First King, okay, we have Rehoboam, okay, who was King Solomon's son and King David's grandson, obviously. Now, this was a foolish young man, okay, and there's a lot we can learn, especially young men, from the plight and mistake of King Rehoboam. Now, King Rehoboam was essentially the king of Judah, okay? He was the last monarch of the United Kingdom of Israel before Israel was divided, okay? And then we had the southern sect of Israel, which is known as Judah, and he was the king of Judah. Now, let me address King Rehoboam's first mistake. Because if you read through First Kings, I believe it's chapter 12, it talks about how basically there's been an uproar of the people at the gates of the castle, Rehoboam's castle, the kingdom, and they're upset, okay? And they're warning King. They're warning him, the young man. Okay, your father was very hard on us. Okay, he basically strangled all that we had out of us. Now we're asking you politely to please not be as strenuous and strict as your father was. Please give us grace. Now, what King Rehoboam does is, instead of taking the advice, well, let's look at 1 Kings 12:8. It says, but Rehoboam rejected the advice of the elders that gave him the advice, and rather consulted with the young men who were his friends that he had grown up with. And that was his mistake. So instead of listening to the men who had served under his father, okay, who had given him wise advice that would help him, okay, and help retain his kingdom, he decided to say, y'all old dudes don't know anything. I'm going to go and listen to my boys, my homeboys. I'm going to listen to them. And obviously they gave him stupid advice. Okay. They said, your father was tough. We'll be even tougher. And so, and some people might say I shouldn't laugh, but it's hilarious to me. Okay. So, because I'm trying to imagine this in my head. So the king Rehoboam, he sends Adoram. Okay. And Adoram was basically the taskmaster who was over the forced labor. And so King Rehoboam sends Adoram to the people to deliver the message that, no, I will not ease up on you. Matter of fact, I'll make it much harder for you. Okay. Just imagine being Adoram. Okay. Okay. The people are ready to burst down the doors to the castle. They're tired. They're fed up. And now you have the king who's telling you to go out there and tell them the worst news they could hear. Okay. They're already ready they're ready to kill. And I'm going to go out here and tell them this news. And so that's what he does. And he gets stoned to death. Okay. So I can kind of picture King Rehoboam kind of like looking out of his little window, right? Kind of like peeking to making sure that nobody can see him peeking. And he sees that Adoram gets stoned to death. And then he takes off on his horse. Like, that's hilarious to me. But it's also a lesson. Okay. And what's the lesson there? The lesson is, and I think a lot of young people make this mistake today, is thinking that older people don't know what they're talking about, thinking that our elders, our parents aren't wise, thinking that, oh, they don't know, they're old. This is the new time. This is a new era. You're old folk. Go away. Okay. That's not true. Listen, anytime there is someone who is older than you, someone who has lived longer than you that wants to give you some type of advice, listen to it. Now, that doesn't mean that you also always have to take the advice. But if there's someone that's willing to take time out of their day to give you some knowledge, some wisdom, listen to it. Okay. Don't ever be too big for wisdom. Okay. And wisdom is not something that's earned or I mean, it's not something that's a birthright. You have to earn it. Okay. And you earn it through trials, tribulations, through living life. And so don't be a foolish young person who kind of waves your finger at somebody who's older who wants to give you some wisdom that can help you. Because if Rehoboam had listened to those elders, okay, he would have not been ran out of his kingdom. Okay. And so I look forward to this movie, The Uprising, because number one, it looks exciting. Andrew I think he's a pretty good actor. And I love movies that I can relate to the Bible, right? I love that about certain movies when I can look at them and say, oh, I see how that happened in scripture. I see how I can line it up with scripture. And because when I'm watching the movie, it kind of makes me think about the Bible. So I like that. So check out the trailer. It's called The Uprising. It's a really good trailer.